I believed her. It's the part I keep returning to, like an old woman circling the same pothole in the sidewalk, stepping into it no matter how many times she's warned herself. I believed her when she said they'd come. It was early spring. When she first said it, the kind of spring that still smelled like winter-wet earth and wood smoke clinging to the breeze, but hopeful in the way that lilac buds peeked through frost. She had called me on a Tuesday during what she called her commute wind-down, which meant she was still half distracted, half listening, typing something or checking her calendar while I spoke. I didn't mind, she said. We'll try to come this summer, Mom, but we'll need decent Wi-Fi. The kids will go crazy otherwise. And just like that, T was already picturing them. My granddaughter with her braids and chipped, nail polish, curled on the sofa with her iPad. My grandson, taller now, maybe finally willing to sit with me and not act like I was a character in an old black and white movie. I imagined us making pancakes. I imagined walking through the back garden, the hydrangeas in bloom again. I imagined asking them questions, not needing to repeat myself twice. The idea of their voices echoing through this old house, God, it was almost too much. I hadn't realized how quiet it had gotten. Not just in sound, but in soul. I stood at the kitchen counter after the call ended, holding the phone to my chest like a warm mug. The light slanted through the window, catching the dust on the rim of the sugar jar, and something soft settled inside me. Something like purpose. Something like soon it was all I needed. I bought a new set of bed sheets for the guest room the next week. Egyptian cotton, on sale, with a pale blue border I thought would feel hotel-like. I ordered a twin trundle frame online so the kids could each have their own bed. I spent one entire afternoon dusting the old toy chest, removing the faded stuffed animals and replacing them with a new set of board games and puzzles I read about in some article. Top 10 screen-free games for preteens. I even polished the piano, though I hadn't touched it in years. There was still that coffee mug ring on the top panel from when my husband was alive. I didn't wipe that part. I don't think I ever will. The Wi-Fi? That became a mission. I asked Gary from across the street, retired IT. Gentle with words, but blunt with technology. He could help upgrade the router. He didn't blink. You don't even use it, do you? He said, lifting the old modem with one hand like it was a piece of fossilized bread. No, I said, but they will. My daughter's bringing the family this summer. He nodded, and I think he understood the way people like Gary do quietly, without probing. He set me up with high-speed fiber and a new password I wrote down in my address book under the W section, next to an entry for Weston. Mabel funeral hymns she liked. That's when it all started to feel real. I began cooking again, not just reheating. I made batches of spaghetti sauce and froze it in labeled containers. I even attempted to bake brownies from the old family recipe my daughter used to love as a teenager, the one where you melt the butter first, mix the sugar before the flour. She'd always sneak the batter and leave chocolate smudges on the refrigerator handle. I left one there on purpose, wiped around it. It made me smile. I kept the pantry stocked with cereal, granola bars, popcorn, things I imagined the children reaching for with careless, everyday ease. I bought strawberry jam. I hadn't eaten jam in over 10 years. My life, which had gotten so lean and quiet, started stretching again. Not loud or clumsy, just wider. Like opening a curtain in April, I went out and bought new towels. Thick, soft, teal. They reminded me of the sea. I rolled them neatly and placed them in a woven basket in the guest bath, right beneath a new bottle of lavender-scented hand soap. She noticed these, I thought. She always loved things that smell clean. I also stocked up on paper napkins and wine. I imagined her sitting at the back patio table in the evening, sipping and laughing, telling me stories about her work. She never really asked about my days, but I didn't mind. It was enough just to hear her voice again. To see her outside of birthdays and polite, distant holidays, and I imagined her children leaning over to hug me. Not the kind Of hug, that's a photo op, but a real squishy, forgetful one. That kind of hug has a smell to it. Salt, shampoo, sunshine. I remembered. By May, I started sleeping with my hair set again. I know it sounds vain, but I wanted to look decent in the mornings, just in case they arrived early. I placed a stack of linens near the hall closet, fresh pillowcases folded into triangles. I found the board games on sale again and bought a few extras just in case a neighbor child visited too. My mind had started blooming outward like that, and then, as if it had all been meant to be, the magnolia tree at the edge of the garden finally flowered. It hadn't bloomed since the year after George passed. I took it as a sign by the time June arrived. I had a little countdown going, not on the wall, not pinned to the fridge, nothing dramatic. Just a penciled note in the corner of my calendar. Maybe this weekend I'd write each Sunday. And then the following Monday, I'd erase it. Lightly, no fuss. Just soft enough that you could still see the dent left in the paper. But I didn't hear anything else. No follow-up call. No confirmed date. No curious question about the trundle bed or the towels or the Wi-Fi password. I had written out on a small card and placed gently on the entry table next to a tiny vase of silk daisies. I told myself she was busy. I imagined her swamped with work. The children probably had summer camps. Maybe they were still planning. People are disorganized. Calendars get full. Travel is expensive. I made excuses for them like I used to make excuses for my own mother when she forgot. My school plays. It's not that they didn't care. It's that life got in the way, right? I dusted again. I kept the fruit bowl full, though I ate it all myself. I changed the linens every 2 weeks, washed or not. I made fresh batches of sauce that replaced the old ones in the freezer. My life became a kind of quiet rotation, a choreography of anticipation. I even found myself putting on lipstick in the morning's soft rose, not too loud, a hopeful color. They'd come. Of course they would. They promised the last Sunday of June. I heard a car slow down outside my window. My heart did something I didn't know it still could. I stood up too fast. My knees cracked. But it wasn't. Just a delivery van dropping a parcel next door. I stood in my living room, heart still thudding, looking around at the house that had quietly, earnestly prepared for their laughter. The cereal, the lavender soap, the Wi-Fi router blinking in the hallway like a waiting heartbeat. That night, I didn't erase the calendar note. I just closed the planner, and I sat for a while in silence, in the kitchen, under a warm yellow light. A brownie tin still on the counter, untouched, waiting. It happened so slowly. I almost didn't notice. Like a light dimming in a room where the sun is setting, you don't feel the moment it fades. Only that it's gone by the time you look up, after that first spring call. There weren't many others. Maybe one more in May, short and filled with background noise, clinking dishes. A child yelling in the distance, the soft ding of another call waiting on her end. She told me she'd circle back soon with dates. Circle back. As if I were an item on a to-do list. I clung to the phrase anyway, wrote it in the margins of my planner like it was a real commitment. Circle back mid-May. I even underlined it. June passed. July warmed the walls of my house with a gentle heat that reminded me of my own mother's kitchen in the 1950s. Aprons, lemonade in glass bottles, the radio humming low and faithful in the corner. But there were no new calls, no messages, just silence. At first I blamed myself. Maybe I hadn't texted enough. Maybe she was waiting on me to initiate. I had never been good with smartphones. The autocorrect made me sound overly formal, like a school teacher from a bygone era. I sent a short message, thinking of you all. Hope to see you soon. No reply that day. Or the next. The message just hung there, green and patient. A tiny, blinking reminder of how invisible I'd become. I tried to stay cheerful. I told myself she'd call when things calmed down. I cleaned. the baseboards, reorganized the pantry, ironed the pillowcases for the third time. I rearranged the spice rack. I even baked a second round of brownies, wrapped them individually in cling film, and put them in the freezer. By mid-July. I found myself talking out loud more often. To the radio, to the kettle, to the empty kitchen. Maybe today I'd murmur to the tea tin, sliding the lid open. Maybe they'll call today. It wasn't just the phone calls that changed. It was the way the air felt when I walked past the guest room before it had buzzed with possibility, the neatly made beds, folded towels, the Wi-Fi password card still in its little frame. Now it just felt still. It's like a stage set after the actors had left. Too perfect, too untouched. And the silence no longer felt hopeful, it felt final. I caught myself one afternoon staring at the family photo on the hallway shelf. It was a vacation picture from 7 years ago, some beach, where the kids had been small enough to still hold my hand. My daughter was wearing sunglasses, her mouth open mid-laugh. I remember taking that photo. She had handed me her phone and asked me to get it candid. I didn't realize that might be the last time I saw her look at me with real warmth. I kept trying. I left a voicemail on her birthday. Wanted to say I love you. Hope the day's beautiful. Call when you can. The message remained unanswered. By late August, the silence started to feel like something living. It moved through the house like a breeze you couldn't shut out. It sat beside me when I read. It crept in when I boiled eggs and set 2 places out of habit, then quietly removed one of the plates. I stopped baking. I stopped writing calendar notes. Stopped brushing my hair every morning. What was the point, really? No one was looking. No one was coming. I still checked their social media sometimes. I told myself it wasn't spying, just curiosity. Just a grandmother missing her grandchildren. There they were. A 4th of July barbecue in someone's backyard, her husband flipping burgers, the kids running through sprinklers in their swimsuits. A caption that read, "Summer days with our people." I wasn't tagged. Of course I wasn't, but I stared at the photo until the screen dimmed, the battery at 5%. I tried not to feel jealous, not of the other grandparents, not of the friends and neighbors who still got cards in the mail and visits on birthdays. But it was hard, especially when I saw the Andersons across the street hosting their daughter and her family for a whole week. Every evening I watched their porch light flick on and off as the children darted in and out, barefoot and free. I sat on my steps once, thinking maybe, just maybe, mine would drive up, but they didn't. The porch light stayed on, waiting in. September, a neighbor asked how my summer had been. I lied. "Oh, quiet but lovely," I said, clutching my shopping bag with both hands. Spent some time reading, keeping the garden in shape. I didn't say I had waited in that garden for the sound of their voices, that I'd bought sparklers for the grandkids and hidden them in a drawer, that I had stood in the middle of the lawn one night, wineglass in hand, imagining their laughter curling around the trees, that I still sometimes set for spoons beside the teacups. There's a difference between loneliness and being forgotten. Loneliness is empty, a hollow you carry, but at least you know it's yours. But being forgotten, that's like slowly being erased from a photograph. Still smiling, still there but fading, pixel by pixel, until all that's left is background. That's how I felt. Like background, a detail in someone else's story. A character they stopped writing, and yet Stilly made excuses. Maybe the phone was lost. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe I was overreacting. I told myself this even when I knew better, because it's easier to believe you've misunderstood than to believe you're no longer loved. That October, the first leaf fell in my garden. I watched it spiral to the ground, slow and sure. The tree didn't scream, just let go. I stood there, hands wrapped around my sleeves, and felt the stillness sink in. Not angry, not grieving, just still. It was a Wednesday, the kind of day that slides by without definition. Gray sky, cold tea, a cardigan thrown over pajamas that never got swapped for anything proper. I was halfway through reorganizing the hallway drawer again. The one that holds stray batteries, rubber bands, birthday candles from old cakes, and a screwdriver set I don't remember buying. That's when I found the receipt. Not mine. Not from anywhere nearby. It had been folded neatly and tucked behind. A crumpled birthday card envelope addressed in my daughter's handwriting, the kind she only uses when she's trying to be quick. The receipt must have been caught inside when I stored the card. At first, I didn't think anything of it, just a stray slip of paper. But then I saw the date, June 14th, and the location, Fernridge Family Lodge, Lakeside Cottage, number 3. 3 nights, 2 adults, 2 children. Paid in full with my Visa. I sat down slowly. The hallway floor creaked beneath me. I stared at the ink until the letters stopped shifting my Visa. I pulled the small ledger I keep from the kitchen drawer. It's the one where I note what I spend pharmacy refills, small gifts. I hadn't used the card for anything that week. I reached for my phone and opened the bank app. It took a minute to log in. My hands were shaking. But when I got in, it was all there. The charge. Fernridge Lodge, $1,238. And beneath that, a few smaller charges that didn't belong to me either. Gas station, fast food. A boutique in some town I'd never heard of. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't even breaking. It was just sinking. Like a boat untying itself and drifting from the dock. They had taken the trip. The one I had prepared. For the one I thought was coming here. And they had used my card to do it. I didn't cry. I wish I could say I did, that there was some release, some dramatic moment of falling to the floor. But there wasn't. I just sat there on the hallway rug, receipt in hand, and let the quiet press in. There are certain betrayals that don't need sound. They arrive fully formed, like a bruise you don't remember getting until it blooms. I made myself a cup of tea I didn't want. I didn't even boil the kettle, just ran hot water from the tap and poured it over a bag. It tasted like regret. I sat at the table and opened their Facebook page. I hadn't looked in a few weeks. I had promised myself I wouldn't, but now I needed to see. Not for drama, just truth. There they were, photo after photo of the trip. The lake glistening in the background. The children smiling with their arms around a dog I didn't recognize. A caption that read, "Unplugged and recharged. Family first." Hashtag grateful in one photo. My daughter held a mug. It was one I gave her years ago, blue and speckled with a chipped handle. She had once told me she didn't want to keep it because it didn't fit their kitchen aesthetic. But here she was, holding it with both hands, smiling. I opened the voicemail box on my phone and listened to the message I left her in June. "Just thinking of you all. Let me know when you're coming. Everything's ready." She had heard that. And still she went somewhere else. With my card, with my mug. With my grandchildren. They didn't forget. They chose. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed holding the receipt like it might disintegrate if I let it go. How many times had I offered to help? How many times had I said, "Use the card if you need to. Just tell me." And she had. Quietly, repeatedly, without telling me. Not for groceries, not for emergencies. For a vacation they didn't want me on. The Wi-Fi had been a lie. The promise to visit had been a smokescreen. They were never planning to come. They just needed the password. And the card that the next morning I walked out to the mailbox in my robe. The air was cold and clear. I stood there for a moment, feeling the wind settle around me like a truth. Inside the box was an envelope from the credit card company. I already knew what it would say. But I opened it anyway, standing right there in the driveway, like I needed the ink to scream before I could let myself believe it. It listed every transaction. It spelled it out. And on the back page in small print it said, "Report discrepancies." Within 60 days, I looked up at the sky. It was blue, empty, honest. I didn't call her. Not that day, not the next. I wanted to ask how she could, to ask why she didn't just tell me, to ask what I had done to become someone disposable, but I knew the answers. She would say she forgot. She would say she meant to tell me. She would say, I offered, didn't I? She would spin it like kindness, or worse, like convenience. A week later, I heard from a neighbor that her niece worked at the Fernridge Lodge gift shop. She remembered my daughter, kind, well-dressed, friendly, paid for everything with a card, and even joked that it was her secret sponsor. My name was never mentioned. That night, I deleted the saved bank account access from her phone. I had helped her set it up years ago when she said she hated remembering passwords. I also changed the WI-V. I wrote the new password in my planner. Not on the entry table. Not in the guest room, just in ink, next to a date that said Fernridge Lodge. Then I crossed it out. I started making a list, not of punishments, not of schemes, just a list of what I still had. What was mine, my name on the deed, my name on the will, my time, my peace, my truth. The receipt I tucked into an envelope and placed in the safe beneath the guest bed. Not because I needed proof, but because someday someone might ask why. And I wanted to remember that the first lie wasn't the money. It was the silence. I waited 3 weeks, not out of fear, not even hesitation. I waited because I needed the heat to settle inside me, to let it cool, not disappear. Not forgive, but clarify. The way tea does after it steeps too long. Bitter. But strong. Unshakable. I didn't want to call while trembling. I didn't want my voice to crack or my breath to shorten. I wanted her to hear me in full. I wanted my silence to have shape. My words, a spine dot. So I waited, and then one Thursday morning, as a light slipped across the hardwood floor, I called. She answered quickly, which surprised me, Mom, she said, bright, cautious. Hey, I was just about to text you. I didn't respond to that. It's a certain kind of sentence that's designed to dissolve guilt before it can even bloom. I was just about to. It's a defense dressed up as affection. I asked how she was. She talked quickly about work, the kids starting school, a new blender they were obsessed with. Not once did she ask how I'd been. After 5 minutes, I spoke. I told her I knew about Fern Ridge. There was a pause, then a laugh. Oh, God, Mom. Are you serious? I stayed silent. She sighed. We weren't trying to hide it. I thought you said we could use the card if we needed it. I said if you needed it, not for a secret vacation. Not without a word. Another pause. I could. Here, a cabinet open, a glass being filled. She was moving, walking, escaping my words. It was just a few charges, Mom. It's not like we emptied your account. That stung more than I expected, not because of what she said, but how she said it, like it was math, not meaning. Like the betrayal had a dollar value and it hadn't met the threshold for concern. I told her it wasn't about the money. She laughed again, shorter, this time. It always is with you. I sat down at the table, the one I had wiped clean so many times this year. There was a crack along the grain I had never noticed until then. No, I said quietly, it's about the erasure. She didn't understand. Or pretended not to. You mean because we didn't come? Mom, it wasn't personal. The kids needed something fun. We were stressed. You don't even like traveling? I wasn't asking to go with you. I said I was asking to be included in your life. The line went quiet. I could hear faint tapping like she was scrolling. She wasn't really in the call anymore. Not with me. Not fully. Then came the shift, the tilt I had feared but somehow expected. Okay, this is getting dramatic. Honestly, I don't know what you want me to say. I didn't mean to hurt you. You said we could use the card. We did. You always make things a bigger deal than they are. There it was. The word dot. Dramatic dot. As if my pain was theater. As if my boundary was a tantrum. In that moment, I was no longer her mother. I was a task. Complaint. A background character in a story she'd rewritten with herself at the center. All the little memories came back like raindrops hitting glass, clear, fast. And cold. The Christmas, I stayed up knitting sweaters for her children while she forgot to send a thank you. The Mother's Day call that came at 9:45 p.m. rushed, whispered, half-hearted. The time she left my birthday gift unopened on her hallway bench for 3 weeks, then sent me a photo of it finally getting some use. None of it had broken me, but all of it had slowly cut away the parts of me she used to see. I told her I was changing the card access, that I would no longer be available for quiet borrowing. She scoffed. Fine, we don't need your help. Anyway, and then under her breath, almost as if to herself, but loud enough to be a dagger, you're just making this harder than it needs to be. I didn't raise my voice. I made brownies, I said quietly. In June, I labeled the towels. I set up the Wi-Fi. I waited every Sunday, Mom. She began, but I kept going. I bought board games, strawberry jam, a trundle bed. I brushed my hair every morning and made space in the fridge. For what? Silence, and then finally, the truth. Ugly, small. I didn't think it would matter that much. I don't remember ending the call. I remember standing up and realizing my back hurt from how long I had sat still. I remember looking at the vase of silk daisies and thinking how stupid they looked now. I remember going to the freezer and throwing out the last of the brownies, but I don't remember hanging up. Later that night, I walked into the guest room. I turned the trundle bed upright again, dismantled the linens. I took the Wi-Fi card from the little gold frame and placed it in the drawer. The lavender hand soap went back under the sink. The basket of teal towels boxed up. I stood in the room and exhaled. The air felt thinner, but clearer. I didn't cry, I just breathed. And I realized that what hurt most wasn't that she had used me, it was that she no longer saw me. Not as a person, not as a mother, not as someone who had held her in the dark when she cried as a child, who had driven all night to pick her up from college when her roommate turned cruel, who had once spent their rent money to buy her a winter coat she said she had to have. She didn't see me. And when people no longer see you, they don't care what they take. I sat on the porch that night. The stars were quiet. The air smelled like the end of something. And for the first time, I stopped waiting. I didn't know what I'd do next. But I knew this much. I was done being background. It started with a folder, not revenge, not bitterness, not a master plan scribbled in fury, just a plain navy blue folder I pulled from the cabinet below the hallway lamp. The one that still flickered when you turned it on too quickly. I hadn't opened that drawer in years. It held the paperwork. That marked the shape of my life title deeds, savings, certificates, insurance policies with dates smudged from too many fingers and too many decades. I sat down at the kitchen table, the one with the faint crack down the middle, and I spread it all out in neat rows. Ownership, inheritance, accounts for years. I had let those papers sit in quiet trust, organized for convenience, not mine, but hers. Because I had imagined a future where my care would be an honor, not a burden. Where she'd look after things gently. Where love would extend past convenience. Where I would age in peace, not in suspicion. That future had died the day she called me dramatic. I poured a cup of tea, black, no sugar. My hands didn't shake anymore. That same afternoon, I called Mr. Asher. He'd been George's lawyer and mine after. Steady, discreet. A man who spoke softly even when the subject was property or death. He answered on the third ring. Mrs. Talbot. He said warmly, like I hadn't vanished from his books for 5 years. I was just thinking of you the other day. What can I do for you? I'd like to review my will, I said. And my financial authorizations. There was a pause long enough to register the weight of my tone. He didn't ask why, he just said, of course. A week later, we sat in his quiet office overlooking the park. The windows were high and the tea was weak. But I felt like I could breathe for the first time in months. We reviewed everything. The original will drawn up 15 years ago left the house, the land, and a substantial account to my daughter. My intention back then had been simple. She was my only child, my world. It seemed natural, but I was no longer part of hers. I revoked the clause that gave her full power of attorney. I removed her name from my shared emergency access account. I added a stipulation that no property be transferred until after probate. With an executor not tied to family, just a quiet, efficient solicitor who wouldn't flinch at guilt-laced voicemails. And then I changed the beneficiary. I named the house and land to a charity that offered housing for single, older women like me, who had been quietly pushed aside. I added a modest gift for each of my 3 dearest neighbors, the ones who waved, shoveled snow from my path, brought me lemons. From their trees when my hands ached, I left nothing for my daughter. Except one thing, a letter to be opened after my passing. Not before. I walked out of that office with a new folder in my bag. Heavier, cleaner. It didn't feel cruel. It felt right. I also called the bank. The woman on the phone was cheerful until she read the activity logs. "Oh," she said, voice dropping. That's not good." She helped me set up alerts, approvals, limits. We closed the shared savings account entirely. I transferred everything into a new one. In my name alone, that night I slept without waking. Not because I felt triumphant, because I felt intact. The next morning I emptied the guest room, not with anger. With calm. I boxed the teal towels. Donated them to the local shelter. The games and puzzles off to the neighborhood school. The trundle bed, I sold it to a mother down the road for half price and told her I was just downsizing. She hugged me when she left. I didn't flinch. I cleaned the freezer next. The last 2 brownies out. The sauce containers gone. I scrubbed the shelves until the smell of vinegar replaced nostalgia. I boiled new tea towels on the stove, bought fresh linens. In a color I liked, moss green, not pale blue. For me, I stopped brushing my hair for imagined arrivals. I brushed it for walks, for wind. For the feel of my own fingers, knowing where each silver strand curved. A few days later, I received a text from her. "Hey, saw a charge removed. Did you switch banks or something?" No greeting, no warmth, no apology. I stared at the message for a full 5 minutes. Then I opened my new planner. Turned to that week's page, and under Thursday I wrote in small, precise letters, "Did not reply." And I DI'd instead. I went outside. The garden had overgrown a little. I let it. There was something wild and honest about letting nature reclaim what you'd once manicured for someone else's approval. I planted lavender. I ripped out the dying rosebush that had never taken the one my daughter had gifted me 5 years ago with a smile that said, "This will give you something to do." I replaced it with mint, for tea, for scent. For me, that week I also joined a Tai Chi class at the community center. At first, I felt out of place, too stiff, too quiet. But the instructor had kind eyes. He didn't speak much, just nodded when I got the movement wrong and smiled when I didn't. I walked home afterward with something moving gently through my chest. Not hope, not yet, but something softer than rage. I also started writing again. Little things, notes, letters, unsent observations. I bought a new notebook with a hard green cover and left it on the side table. I wrote, "You do not have to be invited to live fully." And then I underlined it twice. I didn't tell anyone what I had done. Not about the will, not about the money. Not even about the garden. It was mine. All of it. And the peace that came with that ownership, quiet, clean, slow burning, was the kind that doesn't ask to be seen. It simply grows, like mint, like lavender. Like a woman who remembered her worth, not because someone told her, but because silence finally made space for her. Her to hear her own voice again by month's end. I walked through the house and didn't feel like a waiting room. I felt like a home, lived in, protected, unapologetic, and when I passed the old calendar on the fridge, I didn't erase the scribbled note from June. I tore the whole page off and I burned it. It didn't happen all at once. There was no slammed door. No grand announcement. No tear-streaked drive into the night. That's not how women like me disappear. We vanish quietly, with intention. With grace sharp as glass, it began the day I unplugged the landline. I had kept it for years out of habit. More symbolic than necessary. The same phone number I'd had since 1984. A number my daughter had memorized before she could spell her own name. A number that had once tethered her to me like a string on a helium balloon, tight, safe, there. But now it only rang with spam. And worse, with that hollow tone of people who call not to speak, but to say they tried. I took the receiver off the hook, wound the cord carefully, and stored it in the linen closet beneath the extra blankets. There was no sadness, just space. Next, I silenced my mobile. Not off, not unreachable, just quiet. No more buzzing at midnight. No more blinking lights reminding me that someone had liked a photo but not called. I deleted old text threads one by one, not in anger. In peace, I archived her name. Not from memory, from expectation. They did notice that eventually a text came through that week. Tried calling. Everything okay? No punctuation. No warmth. I read it. I let it sit there, blinking with false concern. Then I swiped left and pressed mute conversation. That silence became my answer. I started going to the market early, before the crowds. I found a little rhythm. There rows of fresh basil, strawberries still warm from the sun, vendors who looked me in the eye and called me love without asking what I did or who I used to be. No one asked if I was waiting for someone. No one asked who I was expecting to join me. And in that absence, I felt whole. The house changed to not dramatically, just enough. The guest room became a reading space. I moved in a soft green chair, the one George used to sit in by the fireplace. I placed it by the window, surrounded it with shelves. Books I'd been saving for when I had time. Turns out I had time now. I just wasn't giving it to people who never earned it. I stopped checking their social media, not out of strength, but out of disinterest. There came a day when I opened her profile and realized I didn't care what she was posting. The photos looked posed. The captions sounded rehearsed. Her world was curated for strangers, not for me, so I closed the app, and I never opened it. Again, by late autumn, the garden had shifted. The mint had overtaken the old brick path in patches, green and stubborn. The lavender bent in the breeze, full and fragrant. The rosebush never came back. I liked it that way. A neighbor invited me for tea one afternoon. Her daughter was visiting and had brought cake. I declined, not rudely, just clearly. I told her I was learning how to be quiet on purpose, how to make peace a practice, not a pause. She smiled in that way people do when they don't understand but respect you. Anyway, there was a knock on my door in early November. I didn't answer it. Through the curtain, I saw her car. Not a visit, just a drop-by. She didn't stay long. Left an envelope wedged between the door and the frame. When I opened it later, I found a birthday card. 3 weeks late. No handwritten message, just, hope it was a good one. Love us. The word love felt like a placeholder. I placed the card unopened into the drawer with the unplugged phone, filed under things that no longer ring true. I didn't tell her I saw the car. Didn't text to say thank you. I didn't chase her down with reminders of what she had missed. That silence was my answer. That silence was my boundary. I began waking up earlier. No alarm, just sunlight and stillness. I lit candles with breakfast, played classical music on the radio, sometimes jazz. I started keeping fresh flowers in a glass bottle on the windowsill, bought by my own hand, for my own pleasure. Peonies, tulips, carnations, with no story behind them, just color. One morning, I took a photo of my table tea candle, notebook, sunlight. I didn't post it, I didn't send it, didn't share it. I just sat in it, fully present, UNOBSERVED. In December, they called again. 6 missed calls in a row. Hey, no voicemails. The next day, a message. We're worried. Can you let us know you're okay? But I had already told them. In June, in July, in October. With brownies and towels and strawberry jam. With my silence now. I was just repeating myself. I wrote a letter to myself that night. Dear me, you are not a ghost. You are not a lesson for others to learn too late. You are not wallpaper in someone else's story. You are breath. You are bone. You are still here. I signed it, folded it, placed it in my bedside drawer. 1 week before Christmas, I donated all. The family photo albums to the church thrift sale, not out of spite. Out of release. Let someone else find joy in faces they'll never know. I kept one photo, me, age 16, smiling by the sea, wind in my hair, before I belonged to anyone. I framed it, placed it on the mantle. She visits me now. Sometimes she says nothing. Just nods. There is a way to vanish and still be fully alive. I didn't run. I didn't flee. Didn't lock doors or change names. I simply stopped answering what no longer deserved me, and in doing so, became something far more powerful than angry. I became unavailable. 1 year later, the house feels different, not newer, not grander, just mine. The walls are still the same faded cream. The tile still squeaks in the hallway if you step just right. The cupboard still sticks when the humidity creeps in. But the silence now feels chosen, not imposed, like the pause after a poem, not empty, but deliberate. There is no calendar on the fridge, no reminders circled in hopeful ink, no notes written in someone else's name, just a small magnet that says, peace is not a place, it's a permission. The garden is wild now in all the right ways. Mint spills over the walkway in unruly ribbons. The lavender stretches past the gate, brushing the knees of visitors who come to drop off soup or borrowed books or soft hellos. There's a birdhouse on the fence post now, and most mornings I watch a pair of wrens fuss over twigs with a precision that makes me smile. I've learned to be quiet in ways that feel like power. I don't need to fill the air anymore. I just inhabit it. My days are full in a way they never were when I was busy waiting. There's the Wednesday Tai Chi class, followed by coffee with Lillian. Squid tells the same stories about her brother and always cries when she talks about 1971. I don't mind. I hold her hand and pass her tissues without interrupting. There's the Saturday walk through the farmer's market, where I buy myself white roses and 1 small jar of honey from a beekeeper. It smells like cinnamon and speaks only when asked. And there's the hour before sunset, when I sit in the reading chair in what used to be the guest room, sip ginger tea, and watch the sky turn the color of forgiveness. I haven't spoken to her since that final text. There were a few more over the winter. A photo of the kids building a snowman. A line that said, they asked about you today. I didn't answer, not out of cruelty, but because I no longer respond to BREAD CRUMBs. If they missed me, they knew where to find me. If they truly wanted me in their lives, they would come. Not to be forgiven, not to explain, but to rebuild from truth, not guilt. And until then, I stay still. There was a knock last spring, a quiet one. It was my granddaughter. Not with bags, not with parents. It's just her. 17 now, taller, quieter. She held a book in her hand. It's the one I gave her when she was 10. The pages softened from time. The corners bent just enough to make me believe she'd really read it. She didn't say anything right away, just looked at me like I was someone she'd almost forgotten and didn't want to lose again. I invited her in. We didn't talk about the past. We made tea, sat on the porch, let the sun stretch across our knees. She asked if the Wi-Fi still worked. I told her yes, but the password had changed. She smiled, not offended, not demanding, just understanding, and then she asked me how I was. Truly, it was a good visit, short, sweet, when she left. I didn't watch her go. I returned to my chair, lit a candle, opened my notebook and wrote, healing is not letting them back in. Healing is knowing you don't need them to leave the door unlocked. There are still moments, flashes of ache. Memories that tap at the window like a moth persistent. Soft, uninvited. I let them come, and then I let them go. I've stopped trying to scrape them out. Grief is not poison. It's residue. It's a trace that you once tried, once gave, once believed. I carry it like perfume now, not heavy. It's faint enough to remind me what I've outgrown. I've learned the art of gentle refusal to invitations that feel like obligation, to phone calls that ask for updates but offer none in return, to guilt disguised as generosity. I've become a woman who knows how to say no without explaining why, who answers questions with silence when silence is the only truth left. Some people call this solitude. Some call it sad. I call it mine. Because when you've spent enough years being the background character in someone else's life, even the quietest chapter in your own feels like a revolution. I've started wearing lipstick again, not for anyone else. Not even every day, just sometimes when the light hits right. And the breeze smells like lemon balm. And I remember the girl I used to be, the one in the photo on the mantel. Wind in her hair, eyes bright with not yet knowing what was coming. She and I sit together now, not mourning, not angry, just whole. Sometimes people ask me if I ever want things to be like they were, and I tell them, kindly, no, because I never want to be waited on again, never want to be proof of someone's goodness. Only present when it's convenient. Never want to measure my worth in phone calls returned or birthdays remembered. I am not a test. I am not a lesson. I am not a cautionary tale. I am a woman who loved, who lost, who learned, and who chose herself quietly, completely. And without apology, the magnolia tree bloomed this spring. It hadn't flowered since the year I lost George. Its petals came late, tentative, curled, unsure. But they came, and when I looked up, watching them dance in the morning breeze, I whispered, so did I.